Here's where I think the snap count numbers get interesting as we look to 2022. All four of these guys are no longer on the roster for different reasons. We mentioned TD Moultrie. He played on 252 snaps. Romello Height, 148 snaps on passing plays. JJ Pegues, 123 snaps on passing plays. And Tony Fair, 108 snaps on passing plays. And so the biggest production that I think you're losing from a passing down standpoint is TD Moultrie. We mentioned he had 4 sacks. I think those 4 sacks will be created by people that fill in that spot. But to me, I think all of these snaps are replaceable. Of those 4 names, though, TD Moultrie, Romello Height, JJ Pegues, and Tony Fair, I think 2 of those guys brought you stability, right? TD Moultrie, which he really probably had his best season at Auburn last year. And then Tony Fair. Tony Fair came in and he did exactly what was asked of him. And I don't think we expected any more or any less from Tony Fair. I think he nailed it. He met expectations, and he was a really solid piece of this defensive front, which props to him. 1-year rental type thing. Romello Height and JJ Pegues, to me, they represented upside and potential of the future. And so you lose that with those guys transferring. Romello Height's at USC now, and JJ Pegues, like pretty much every other transfer, is at Ole Miss. You look at that, it's like, okay, well, I think the upside of Dylan Brooks is actually higher than Romello Height. I don't think that's crazy to say. And then JJ Pegues, his upside's pretty tremendous just because to be that big and to move that well. But we don't know how he's going to pan out as a defensive lineman. If Marcus Harris gets half of those snaps, I'm okay with it. That put him in the same ballpark as the other elite pass rushers on this team. And I think he's worthy of that. I really do.
And then there's a guy like a Jeffrey Imba. We've heard nothing but good things about him. Sure. He's another guy who kind of profiles as that super athletic interior guy who can take some of those JJ Pegues snaps. And I don't necessarily know what his ceiling is versus Pegues. Like you said, Pegues just has an absolutely absurd ceiling because he's so athletically talented. He's just very raw when it comes to technique and what he's doing on the defensive line, which Jeffrey Imba is pretty raw as well, from what I understand. Hasn't played football his entire life. But you at least you can see a window where Marcus Harris gets some of those snaps and is just as effective on a per snap basis. And then a guy like Jeffrey Imba has a chance to come in and be very productive on a per snap basis, and you get more production than what you had from last year's rushers. I can very clearly see that path.
Yeah. And I'm just curious if they compensate it by giving their elite guys more reps and more snaps, or do they build out depth in a rotation? Because I think you can really make the argument for both, because I like Auburn's 2 deep a ton. In some cases, I like their 3 deep up front. That's a tough decision for Jimmy Brumbaugh and Coach Schmedding to make when you talk about the strategy going into the season for this defense.